Hey now, Grizz here. So, anybody who collects Swiss Army knives know these are A, the gateway drug to knife collecting, and B, a deep, deep rabbit hole that once you go down, there is no coming out. But everybody, most guys end up going the same way, going down, looking for older and older Swiss Army knives, and I'm no exception of that. Currently, I would say this is probably my oldest Victorinox. This dates to the 1930s, although it's not very different from what we have today. It's in between what the original. This is basically the stepping stone between the original 1897 and the later 1946 and the modern models. So obviously we got buffalo horn scales. I've showed this one off before. It's got nickel silver liners. We've got that all. The 5-turn corkscrew. The early Warner style can opener. Bam. We've got the cap lifter. This would be one of the earlier cap lifters. They just briefly came out, before this, they would have had a solid screwdriver. Notice the cap lifter even has a tang stamp on it, Army Swiss. This tang stamp dates back to 1897, to the original officer knives. And that is why they're called Swiss Army knives. Next up, we got the main blade, if I can get it out, which has this beautiful Victorinox in the ribbon with the crossbow over top of it, almost like an umbrella, which is funny. I saw a Wenger stamp described by a non-knife person as an umbrella, and I just pictured William Tell with his heroic umbrella, doing all kinds of heroic umbrella things back in medieval Switzerland. But this tang stamp dates from 1931 to 1942. The Army Swiss tang stamp dates from 1897 to 1945. So this certainly is between 1931 and 1942 easily. And then finally, we've got a clip blade. And for a while, this has been the oldest Swiss Army knife in my collection. And it still is. It's the oldest Victorinox Swiss Army knife in my collection. Then we go to Wenger. And in Wenger, I've got something a little better. I believe this dates to about 1925, maybe 1930 at the latest. This is a Wenger Tahara. It has no shield, has the fiber scales. It's very much every bit of what the original officer knife looked like, save for having the cap lifter, which is a big improvement over a plain screwdriver in anybody's opinion. This now has aluminum liners, a 4-turn corkscrew at this point, although Wenger did the opposite, where Victorinox started out with a 5-turn and then changed to a 4-turn later down the line. Wenger started with a 4-turn and then changed to a 5-turn in the 60s. Who knows why? It probably has to do, I know for a fact that Victorinox outsources their corkscrews, and I think their Phillips drivers too. And I suspect Wenger does the same thing, and that's probably what has to do with why the corkscrews changed. We've got the 4-turn corkscrew, no decorative fluting on that. We got that bail, bam. We've got the old school can opener, the cantalouper. We've got the cap lifter with a very stiff spring on that cap lifter. I will say that. Excellent snap. We've got the main blade. And this actually has a very fine etch that they only did for a couple of years. It says Swiss made right there. And they only did that very briefly around the end of the 20s, early 1930s. And we've got the Wenger Tahara tang stamp. Tahara, I believe, is a Buddhist. It's either a Buddhist or Hindu god, one of those Eastern philosophies, but it's a goddess in one of those religions. I've seen people say it's a Jewish goddess. No, there's a different Jewish goddess named Tara and Tahara, two different things. The 3-syllable thing is like, Samsara, Nirvana, Tahara, Garment, there's a lot of them. So, but anyway, so this is my earliest Swiss Army knife, right? By Wenger, but earliest one I have. Then the other day, I got this guy. Now, I don't think this is as early as them. I suspect this is 30s or 40s. I mean, it could be earlier, but if I had to guess, I would think it's in the 30s or 40s. But we've got a 3-layer here with a big boy saw on it. Notice the saw has this like hunchback look. It goes down and then it comes back up to, I guess, to raise up the nail nick a little bit. Other than that, you know, pretty much standard issue stuff. I just talked about this the other day. This had some damage that I had to repair. I did the best I could. It's not ideal, but it's better to have working blades than blades with chunks and stuff missing out of them. That I cannot forgive, as the Godfather once said. And then, much to my excitement the other day, I got this guy. Now, this guy just screams antique knife. As soon as you see it, look how dark the fiber scales are. Just the amount of patina on everything. The carbon steel tools and springs. I've done some minimal cleaning to this, but I really don't want to ruin the old character this thing has. It's nice and tight. Has a bail that is extremely similar to a Wenger bail, in that it has this little line added on right about that lines up with the end of the scales. This is very much meant to look like a Wenger knife, or a Victorinox for that matter from this age. We've got a very heavy gauge wire on the 5-turn corkscrew. Very interesting. Good spring snap to that. We've got the awl. Notice the brass liners. Notice 4 exposed pins with the bird's eye rivets on the either end. Then we've got the cantiloper. We've got a beefy wood saw on this one, and I've actually tried this saw out. This has excellent saw teeth on it. This is a saw that the teeth were probably cut in by hand, and they did an excellent job. I mean, they changed the teeth now. They're cut in by machines, which is why they're not angled and why they're just way easier to cut in and do the same job. But the saw actually has a stamp on it that is mostly gone. I can read Heinrich, blank space, Wald, Solingen. I've come to the conclusion, I believe that it's Heinrich Klein. After doing some research, it says Germany on the back, but I believe the stamp is Heinrich Klein. And I believe they just made the saw. And I'll get to that why in a minute. So, we've got a beautiful main blade. No tang stamp on the main blade. Kind of common. A lot of manufacturers, even Victorinox and Wenger early on, they made their tools blank, and they would stamp them with whatever retailer wanted stamped on it. You know, like Hofritz, for instance. Many little family-owned cutlery shops sold the early Swiss knives with their family branding on it. So I'm sure many knives have been thrown away or is written off as fakes because they don't say Victorinox on them, and they're real, which is something to keep you awake at night when you're dreaming, when visions of Swiss Army knives dance in your head. Then we've got the secondary clip blade. Again, no stamp on this guy. Now, I skipped one tool, and there's a good reason why. Look at that. Solid screwdriver. Now, when you see that, you've either got a replica or you've got an early one. I mean, this is a pretty early one. And it's super cool that it's got this stamp on it. And thanks to the help of a couple guys over at the All About Pocket Knives forum, I found that stamp, it happens, if you can't tell, it's a frog holding a straight razor. And the frog was a registered trademark of a company called, of a gentleman named Gebruder Roger. And his knives were sold, he made razors, straight razors that were sold by Utica Straight Razor Company, not Utica Cutlery. They're two different companies, but still an American company imported these razors from Solingen. And they often, there'll be a ribbon under here that says like Garoso, and that was the brand of the straight razors. But they also made cutlery, And this is an example of the cutlery. But that's why I think the saw has a completely different tang stamp than the screwdriver. So I think the knife was made with parts mostly made by the one with parts outsourced from another manufacturer. I don't know how to reconcile the fact that it's got two completely different manufacturers' tang stamps on the same knife. But it's super cool that it has this. And I got to say, at first, I thought, you know, if you've ever seen the Wenger Three Faces logo, at a distance, you might be able to see that there. I mean, obviously it's not, but I think they tried to evoke that kind of shape, the kind of mountain shape, and maybe confuse people, or maybe I'm completely wrong, but I'm just guessing. But when you see one of these solid screwdrivers, you know you got something special. So this certainly dates to the early 1920s. I mean, absolutely gorgeous knife. And listen, if you care because it's a Victorinox, it's not a Victorinox, it's not real. You have no clue what you're talking about. Victorinox, these design knives existed before Victorinox and during, and you know, Victorinox perfected a style of knife, but they didn't invent the style of knife. German cutlers were making these going back to at least the 1860s and probably before that. So what Victorinox did was they put their little spin on it and made the perfect version of that knife, which coming full circle, then German manufacturers came around to copy on their own later. So it's an interesting story. But if you're biased to if you of the opinion that, oh, if it's not a Victorinox or a Wenger, it's not a real knife, it's a fake, it's a knockoff, a clone, whatever. I mean, it's just silly. You know, a cool old knife is a cool old knife. I don't care who made it. Unless it's made in China. We all know Chinese knives are junk. I kid. I like Chinese knives too. But I really like German knives and Swiss knives and French knives and even some American knives. But this is certainly a cool one. One giveaway that that, you know, even from the distance would made me know that it wasn't a real one just from the pictures was that even though this isn't a real one, it does represent what I'm talking about. In that Wenger and Victorinox, when they have a 3-layer, the saw opens on the opposite end of the main blade. While on this one, the saw and the main blade are on the same end. And I think there's a good logic behind that. I think that the problem with the saw being on the same end is that it partly covers the nail neck on the main blade. I think that's a good reason to switch them. But the reason to have them on the same end is that now you don't have the bail in the way of the saw. Not that it gets that much in the way, but that might bother some people. So anyway, but I'm super happy to have this. This is definitely by far and away the oldest Swiss Army knife, the oldest officer's knife. That's what this is. Let's call it what it is. This is an officer's knife, camper knife, whatever you want to call it. But six-bladed camp knife is the old term for it, or an officer's knife. But I have a real one coming in next week. I can't wait to get that one in my hands. I have a 1921 to 1923 Victorinox with the solid screwdriver coming, and I can't wait till that gets here. And that came in an absolute pile of junk. I can't wait to sort through that pile and see if there's anything else cool in there. Anyway, that is my rant about old Swiss Army knives. I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Take care. Have a great weekend. Yada, yada, yada. Blah, blah, blah. Yakety, schmackety. I'm out of here.